After spending $1 billion on one season of The Rings of Power, I bet Amazon has been watching the backlash unfold on social media to everything they've done and said so far. From the teasers to cast interviews, there's been a lot of worry about this series, but it seems like the people at Amazon are starting to worry about the future of the show because they're already starting damage control. The showrunner has attempted to address concerns the show will embrace modern politics, and it's not calming fans down at all. I have a bunch of things to show off, but before we get into the topic at hand, if you enjoy the content that I create, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Follow me on social media like Twitter or mine so that you can see when my content is posted, and of course if you do really enjoy the videos and the live streams that I create, please consider becoming a Dark Titan via Patreon for just $1 a month, or support the channel via YouTube memberships. All of the links are in the description, and of course, I do really appreciate all of the support. So this is a GameSpot article that I wanted to start with. It says The Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power won't be influenced by modern day politics, the showrunner says. I hate calling it The Lord of the Rings of Power. Usually I just call it Amazon's Rings of Power because this will never be Lord of the Rings to me. It says in a recent interview, one of the Rings of Power showrunners touched on rumors regarding the show's politics. Some rumors have been growing recently that the Rings of Power will be affected by modern politics, but speaking to Total Film, co-runner Patrick McKay denied that this is the case, saying the show aspires to being timeless, comparing it to the original works from J.R.R. Tolkien. It says this was one of his debate points with C.S. Lewis, his friend and colleague. It was very important that what he was creating was not an allegory. He was not commenting on historical events of his time or another time. He was not trying to transmit a message that spoke to contemporary politics. He wanted to create a mythos that was timeless and would be applicable. That was his word, applicable, the applicability across times. He goes on to explain that with every choice the team has made regarding the show is to be faithful to that aspiration, as they don't want to adapt the material in a way that might make it feel dated. We aspire to being timeless. That's why these books still speak to people so much, because so much of what's in them has not aged a day, and we aspire to do the same thing. Now, this would be a great statement if they were actually being truthful. If they went into this wanting to make it timeless, I would be praising them over this, but we can see that that just isn't true. It's not what they're trying to do with this series. If they were, they wouldn't be having lead actors saying, we want you to see this through a modern lens and to see the world globally represented. Princess Disa's actress wouldn't be saying, this is a reflection of the world we live in. They're not trying to create something that Tolkien would want. They're trying to create something they want, and that is the problem. Yes, there's not COVID references or Trump references or real world references, but they're still taking characters and changing them and their stories for the sake of modernity. It says he also touched on how the timeline of events compared to the original works has been condensed, noting that humans would die between episodes due to their comparatively much shorter lifespans. This is another giant problem I have had with this series, is the timeline. I understand that through this time, it's not like there are 5 books that they could adapt the stories directly from, right? But there is still a lot of information, and I think that they could create great seasons and stories with that. But the problem is that they're not actually doing that. We know the first season covers thousands of years span because we've seen the different scenes throughout all of the teasers, all of the trailers, all of the different images, which I do think isn't a great idea, okay? I do think that it is going to make it very difficult for people watching it to really get a feel for characters, for the time period that they're trying to say. I worry that it is going to be hard for a lot of people to understand, okay, right now we're in this time period or that time period. The only difference is going to be the characters, and if they're saying that, you know, humans are just going to die between episodes, I think it's going to be hard for them to get people to want to come back and watch it. I mean, look at something like Game of Thrones, right? Look at the show, for instance. While yes, there were multiple different point of views, as in the book, we're not talking about thousands of years jump here. It'd be if, you know, House of the Dragon and the base Game of Thrones original show were shoved into one series. It would be very confusing if you didn't understand, you know, the source material, if they don't tell that properly. I just don't know if this is going to go over well. Obviously, I'm willing to give it a chance. I'm willing to see how it goes, because maybe they'll be able to do something cinematically that is just magical. I just don't think that they're capable of that at this point. It says we were given another look at the show with a new trailer from San Diego Comic-Con, which GameSpot has broken down for you. I don't need them to break it down for me. I've already watched this. But this is the main part of this article that I wanted to read. Them talking about being faithful to that aspiration of being timeless, and that's why these books still speak to people so much. Throughout this process, they have gone, we're doing things because Tolkien didn't talk about them, so it's basically a free pass, and that's another problem. Clearly, their goal was to find a way to market this with modern politics in mind, and the show mirrors that. You've got all of these actors openly admitting to this, and so no matter how much the showrunners want to convince people they're not doing this so that we watch their show, it's just another lie. While yes, all the Peter Jackson movies had their own flaws, they didn't do what this show is doing, which is looking at Middle-earth through a modern lens, as these actors are saying. And while in some cases with the Peter Jackson films, they didn't stay as close to the source material as possible, they still did most of Tolkien's work justice and ended up being fantastic films. Rings of Power has a lot it could get wrong, with character changes, thousands of years of story being told in one season. $1 billion spent doesn't mean it'll make that $1 billion back and it'll be $1 billion good. And I keep referencing all of the things that these actors have said. This article brings it up and sums up all of these cast quotes perfectly. It says, Lindsay Weber told Vanity Fair, one of the executive producers, it only felt natural to us that an adaptation of his work would reflect what the world actually looks like. Tolkien is for everyone. His stories are about his fictional races doing their best work when they leave the isolation of their own cultures and come together. Then we've got Sophia Nomvet, who plays Princess Disa, saying we are redressing the balance within the film and television, the television industry, of course, in this franchise. I hope lots of franchises moving forward. It's their time, and it's so important, and I hope many people will see this fantasy and be able to relate to it. This is a reflection of the world we live in. That right there, compared to the showrunners' statements from a moment ago, they don't add up. They do not equal the same things. Ismael Cruz Cordova, who plays an original character, expressed a similar sentiment. The awareness of diversity within his original source material has grown. The cinematic world that Peter Jackson created has immense value, but we've shifted lenses since then. The conversation is different right now, but going back to the source material, the world is diverse not only in race, but also in thought. And then we have another actress. This cast is truly global. Everyone sort of has their frame of reference in terms of their culture, heritage, language. Part of the story we're trying to tell is you have different people of different races coming together to defeat a common enemy. You're trying to look at this through a modern lens, and the world is global, and people now expect to see this kind of world globally represented. I wish that I could believe what these actors and directors and showrunners were saying at this point, but you've got some of them saying, oh, we're trying to see his work through a modern lens, and then some of them saying, oh no, it won't be influenced by modern day, especially the politics, and the lie detector has determined that that was a lie. This is why people are not enjoying the teasers and trailers. This is why a lot of people are not excited for this series, because you can't believe what the show is going to be based on the words of the showrunners, and judging by the trailers, it looks a bit messy. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed it and found it important and informative, please make sure to give it a like, share it, and subscribe to the channel. And of course, if you didn't, make sure to give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I will talk to you all again in the next video really soon.